The Hinokami Kagura, better known as sun breathing, is Demon Slayer's oldest and most powerful technique. It's so strong that even the Demon King, Kibitsuji Muzan himself, feared for his life because of it. For this reason, he and the upper rank one Kokushibo set out to remove all sun breathing users from history. However, to avoid going extinct, it was secretly turned into a dance to pay respect to the fire god in order for it to survive on throughout generations. Starting with the man who earned himself the title of being the strongest demon slayer in history, Yoriichi Tsukigini. Without him, there is no demon slayer. He was born during the Sengoku period, alongside his twin brother Michikatsu, where he would go on to become the progenitor of all breathing styles and the first to bear the demon slayer mark on his forehead. In spite of that, in this time period, twins were seen as an extremely bad omen, which was only made worse because of Yoriichi's demon slayer birthmark. Whilst it would later be sought after by the Hashira after seeing its capabilities firsthand with Tanjiro, this wasn't always the case. Yoriichi's father planned to kill his son until his mother stepped in to stop her husband. This saved Yoriichi's life, but in return meant he would have to leave the clan to become a monk at the age of 10. Michikatsu, on the other hand, was treated as royalty, set to become the next heir to the family. The two had different rooms, clothes, education, and even food. This poor upbringing meant Yoriichi would simply keep to himself and not even talk. Thus, his family presumed he was deaf, whilst his brother even pitied him. Their father found out that the two had built a friendship together and quickly put a stop to it, not wanting their prodigy Michikatsu to be tainted by his useless brother. Things soon changed, however, when their family realized that the real prodigy was Yoriichi. At 7 years old, he finally spoke his first words in front of people, declaring his dream to become the greatest samurai, whilst easily defeating Michikatsu's expert swordsman teacher. He struck 4 vital spots on the trainer, surprising his brother, who had never before landed even a single blow on his sensei through all his time training. Desperate to understand how Yoriichi achieved this, he begged his brother to teach him the secret, which turned out to actually be the early stages of sun breathing. The power Yoriichi had was, funnily enough, from his birthmark that he was ridiculed for, as he was actually blessed by God. The universe had gifted Yoriichi these divine abilities to act as a natural counter against Muzan. Now, after Yoriichi attempted to explain to his brother the secret of his training, including how he had access to the transparent world, Michikatsu got jealous. Years later, the two met again when Yoriichi saved his brother from a demon, having finally created and mastered the sun breathing we're familiar with. Seeing that his brother was blessed by the heavens, Michikatsu abandoned everything to go and train with him and master sun breathing, hoping it would too make him as strong as Yoriichi. However, he couldn't master it. In fact, sun breathing was almost impossible for anybody to master. Because of this, Yoriichi taught his students to make subtle changes to their form, which became the catalyst for every other breathing style in existence. Now, after training with his pupils for some time, the Demon Slayer mark began resonating, spreading between the samurai. Whilst this gave them great power, resulting in the golden era of Demon Slayers, it also came at a great cost, as the mark was stated to be cursed, killing all of its users by the age of 25. The only exception of this group being Yoriichi, who was naturally born with it, and his brother, who panicked and became a demon known as Kokushibo to escape his fate of an early death, which is why he was so surprised to meet his brother again 60 years later, alive. Before then, however, Yoriichi had his fateful encounter with Muzan. This was the first time that Muzan had ever come close to death, when the Demon Slayer god used the secret 13th form of sun breathing to cut the Demon King into 1,800 tiny pieces. This form was created solely for the purpose of killing Muzan, as by combining and repeating the previous 12 forms, one could destroy all of Muzan's 12 vital organs that moved freely inside his body. It was truly the only way to kill such a demon, and even though Yoriichi failed that night, he damaged Muzan on a cellular level, which scarred the demon, laying the groundwork for Tanjiro 500 years later. However, Yoriichi's failure to kill Muzan, along with his brother's betrayal, changed his life forever, as he was banished from the Demon Slayer organization. From this day forward, Yoriichi practically retired. He needed something new in life, and so he visited Sumiyoshi and Suyuko, two people he had saved from demons prior, telling them about all the ups and downs of his life stemming back from childhood. This is where Yoriichi's connection with the Kamados began, as he would constantly perform each of these sun-breathing forms for them each night, which Tanjiro's ancestor Sumiyoshi would watch with a keen eye. The legend of Yoriichi would would end many years after this with one final duel against his brother, where the now blind samurai died of natural causes in front of Kokushibo. Now let's move on to the next known user of the Hinokami Kagura, Sumiyoshi Kamado. During Yoriichi's final visit to the Kamado household, he gave Sumiyoshi his Hanafuda earrings, thus he promised to preserve the sun-breathing form throughout his descendants, giving it the name Hinokami Kagura. And as we can see from the story, Sumiyoshi kept his promise, as it became a long-lasting tradition to perform the Hinokami Kagura dance every year to pass it down to the next generation. Although Sumiyoshi was not at war with the demons, the fact that he successfully preserved the Hinokami Kagura confirms to us all that he was indeed a master of the sun-breathing style, whether he knew it or not, despite only learning it through watching Yoriichi's movements. After hundreds of years of this dance being performed though, we've reached Tanjiro's father, Tanjuro, who, yes, was actually a proficient sun-breathing user and may be more powerful than you give him credit for. From a young age, Tanjiro would watch his father perform the dance from dusk till dawn without stopping, where he realised his father had a scar, which Tanjiro reveals he was born with. This mark is something all sun-breathing users are destined to unlock, as even when it's not visible from birth, it can be unlocked naturally, like in Tanjiro's case, when his body temperature vastly increased due to a spill of hot water falling on him. This meant that although Tanjiro's birthmark never manifested to the degree of Yoriichi or Tanjiro's, he was still one of the only characters to have been blessed by the Demon Slayer mark from birth. In spite of it being in its most basic form though, Tanjiro had access to the transparent world. Demon Slayers that have awakened the mark unlock a heightened level of vision, being able to see the inner workings of people's bodies. This allows them to predict and evade their opponent's attacks, as well as find openings for their own. He learned the transparent world from his own father, suggesting that he too was a powerful swordsman and a talented wielder of the sun-breathing style. This is exactly what allowed Tanjiro to flex his ability in front of his son when he took down a bear twice his size. This is all the while being held back by a rare disease that made him frail and weak. Despite this though, he was still one of the strongest humans of his generation. However, he never showed an interest in joining up with the Demon Slayer Corps to fight Muzan, as he instead focused on raising a loving family, meaning that we never got to see the full potential Tanjiro truly had. Regardless though, the fact that he was so powerful without his fully manifested mark, no practice using sun breathing, no Nichiren blade, using just a normal standard axe, on top of being ill, it makes you think, how powerful would a peak demon slaying Tanjiro be? Surely he would have reached the rank of Hashira, right? Someone who would have reached the rank of Sun Hashira, however, if there was any need for one by the time he'd finished, was Tanjiro. Following the murder of his family at the hands of Muzan, as well as Nezuko being turned into a demon, Tanjiro trained with the former water Hashira Sekonji Urokadaki to become a demon slayer after being recommended by Giyu. Being scouted by both past and present water Hashira meant that Tanjiro was surely destined to use water breathing, right? Well, whilst it was enough to get him through the early stages of the story and impress those around him, it wasn't his natural affinity, which caused some issues when the going really got tough. However, it was in the battle against Rui that Tanjiro leveled up after recalling the Hinokami Kagura dance his father would perform. Performing the same moves based on just memory alone was all but enough confirmation that sun breathing was what Tanjiro was truly built for. However, despite this, it still took a large toll on his body. It would often be his last resort move to use on enemies, as each time he would use it in battle, he'd find himself completely exhausted afterwards. Thus Tanjiro had to do something about it, because he knew he couldn't kill the man that made his life hell, Muzan. And so, upon entering the Swordsmith village, Tanjiro found the perfect tool to help him grow stronger, thanks to a little bit of help from the love Hashira Mitsuri Kanroji. On his journey in the village, Tanjiro encountered Kotetsu arguing with the Mist Hashira over a key to a training weapon called Yoriichi Type 0. This was a fighting training doll made from technology during the Sengoku era, based off Yoriichi, the creator of sun breathing himself, as a way to honour his skill. No matter how hard they tried though, it was impossible to accurately replicate the skill of the undisputed strongest demon slayer history had produced. Thus they created the doll to capture Yoriichi's speed and movement as much as possible by giving it 6 arms and 6 katana. This is what made the Type 0 doll so important for Tanjiro's training, as by battling against it consistently he would eventually be able to keep up with it, entering into a league of his own in comparison to most demon slayers. It came at a great cost, however, as the boy who trained him, Kitetsu, wasn't really the best at teaching others, let's say, as his grueling regime had Tanjiro going without food or water for 3 whole days. He'd have been dead in the series over if not for the rain. Clearly Kitetsu had at least some idea of what he was doing, however, as on the verge of death Tanjiro leveled up once again to defeat the doll. This was important because now Tanjiro was well and truly Hashira level. Still, at this point his sun breathing style wasn't at the required point to battle the Demon King Muzan. However, remember Sumiyoshi who we spoke about earlier? Well, he was the key in allowing Tanjiro to master this OP breathing style. Kitetsu explained in the Swordsmith Village arc of a unique phenomenon known as inherited memories. As the name suggests, this is when one can envision the memories of their ancestors as if they were their own, which is exactly what happened with Tanjiro and Sumiyoshi, and in a similar sense, all the other demons and their fearful visions of Yoriichi, which had also been inherited from Muzan's memories. This was vital information that allowed the tide of battle against Muzan to change in the favour of the Demon Slayers, as not only did Tanjiro noticed the scars left behind from Yoriichi signalling Muzan's weak spots, Tanjiro began to notice tiny little differences between his own footwork and positioning etc. in comparison to Yoriichi's. Thus it all came full circle as Sumiyoshi's promise to pass on the sun-breathing style finally paid off when Tanjiro, along with everyone else, finally managed to get the job done and defeat Kibitsuji Muzan once and for all, completing Yoriichi's mission. The Hinokami Kagura did not end here though, as even 100 years later Yoriichi's legacy lived on with Sumihiko and Kanata Kamado, the descendants of Tanjiro, as according to the second official fanbook of Demon Slayer, the 2 siblings perform it in front of the Ubuyashiki shrine as a ceremonial ritual. Now if you enjoyed this video, click the one on your screen right here to learn about the strongest ever Demon Slayer, second only to Yoriichi, Gyomei Himejima.